Mike, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, go. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Gamecast Radio Sports Talk. I am Tim Kernan alongside Mike Freshwater. Mike, how are we doing this morning?
Doing great. Looks like it's going to be a great weekend of sports. Obviously, high school got it well underway for us Thursday, and then last night, and then college today, and the NFL kicks in for really real. I know there was a game the other night, but the full slates this weekend, and looking forward to all of that action over the next couple of days.
Absolutely, and boy, the weather has really kind of broke this morning. It's cool outside. It definitely feels like football.
Yeah, I don't know if I dressed for the 62 degrees temperature as I walked outside this morning, but I don't think it's going to get much real warm or too warm. I think we're done with the 90s, and I think football weather might finally be here.
Yeah, and college, of course, is what they would call it week 2, but it's actually week 3 with that first week that they call week 0.
Right.
But yeah, college pretty much underway now, going into their official week 2, as I said. But there were a lot of great games last week, Mike, and you and I picked a few. You and I went head-to-head on the LSU Florida State game and the Duke Clemson game. I actually called an upset alert on Clemson,
right. Yeah.
but I picked Clemson because I thought they would.
Oh, that's right.
And you switched.
Yes, I did because you. Yeah, so yeah, I did. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe in it all that much, but it was obviously a tremendous game for those guys. Man, what a game for Duke, and we know one of the assistants, the special teams coach,
Yeah.
down there, Pat Doherty. I've interviewed him for our halftime shows a couple of years ago, I think right after COVID, and couldn't be happier for Pat.
Absolutely. That's a huge win for Duke.
Huge.
I don't think Clemson is quite the team that they have been the last 10 years or so. They're still a very good team.
Well, they were ranked 7th.
Yeah,
they were ranked.
And that is just a win that can kind of put your team on the map as long as they follow it up with some consistent play.
Yeah, I think the first time Duke's knocked off a top 10 team since they beat Clemson in like the 80s or 90s or something. So, yeah, absolutely a huge win for Duke. They're riding high, and hopefully that gives them some solid momentum going into this week's game.
So you and I will discuss a couple of college football games a little bit later in the show and make a couple of picks. But I also, you and I talked a little bit about this last week, I think, but another documentary came out on the Florida
Yes.
program called Swamp Kings, and I did
Yes.
have a chance to watch that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. There were some things that I thought were kind of glossed over a little bit in that one that they didn't really get into.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that was an agreement. Maybe Coach Meyer didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
But
I think people were hoping to see some of that dirt, but
Yeah.
Aaron Hernandez and
right,
a couple
exactly.
other incidents that happened down there under Urba's watch, but it was not included. Aaron Hernandez was almost not even mentioned in it. There
No,
was a
I think they
picture,
showed him. Yeah,
yeah.
they showed him a few times, but no, they
But
did
it was
not
it
talk
was a
about
good
that.
behind the scenes look at Urban and basically the intensity and the pressure he puts on himself and what he did down there to get that program back on track. I don't think it's something you can sustain, year over year over year, but and it's proven to be that it is not. But it got him back on track, and they had a couple great years there with him and Timmy Tebow, and it was interesting. 4 episodes, I think.
Yeah, it was 4.
So it's definitely worth the watch. I'd recommend it. But don't if you're expecting some real good dirt, you're not going to see that. So, but a good inside look at the seasons that they had down there together and how they unfolded and some of the characters that were involved in that.
No, I thought they, he didn't hide from some of it, but yeah, they didn't get in too much to some of the incidents that went on down there. But it is a good look at, as you mentioned, the pressure that coaches go through. And he eventually ended up resigning from Florida, and then everybody knows, of course, that he took over at Ohio State a couple of years later. And they didn't get into that too much, but that story was, his family agreed that he could take that Ohio State job if he agreed to a few things and signed one of those family contracts.
He had some health issues at Florida,
Yeah.
which is why he left. Yeah, he that was his dream job supposedly. Though I've heard Notre Dame was also definitely a dream job. But he did have that agreement with his family that he'd make some changes to maybe loosen up a little bit. But I don't know if that really happened for them, and he abided by that truthfully. But it would have been nice to see Urban stay a couple more years at Ohio State, and what might have happened had he been able to do that. But I'm okay with where they're at today. I think Ryan Day is more than capable, and Urban's on TV now, so I don't think you'll ever see Urban coaching again. I really don't. But I wouldn't be surprised by anything a coach does.
No, he coached, as you said, he coached he coached at Notre Dame under Bob Davie.
Yes,
And
loves Notre Dame.
well, he did, and I always kind of hoped that he would end up at Notre Dame,
And
but
he
I think
he
there's a
almost
little
did.
bit too much baggage there now.
Now there is, but when he was leaving Utah to go to Florida, he almost went to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think
A couple of issues, or a couple of requirements of some kids he wanted to either bring along with him or recruit to Notre Dame that they wouldn't allow for, I'm sure, probably questionable academic issues. And so he backed off of that and ended up with Florida, and obviously the rest is history.
yeah, I was in his camp, and I'm kind of a fan of Urban Meyer. I don't like a few things that he has done, but he's a heck of a coach, and he's proven it more than once.
Yeah, and I love his loyalty to Ohio. He is from Ohio, Ashtabula. Went to UC. He's got a lot of Ohio roots and ties, and he loves Ohio State, and he did a great job there. And so I'm never going to not like him, but I don't know if he'll ever get a chance to coach at a really big time program ever again. But you know what? Like I said, stranger things have happened.
Absolutely, Mike. I wanted to get your reaction, of course, and we're gonna bring on Jeff Gilbert here in a few minutes, but just talk, our favorites, Notre Dame and Ohio State. Just wanted to get your reaction, one on Ohio State's first game, McCord's first performance at quarterback, and Notre Dame did what they had to do last week, beat Tennessee State, but Notre Dame, they'll face NC State today. Again, we'll get into a little bit more of that game, but
That won't be easy.
No,
That will
and it's
not be
supposed to be very inclement weather down there again today because of the hurricane that will kind of brush through that area. But they're going to get some bad weather, so that's going to be another interesting game, and that one's going to kick off at 12 o'clock. So
Yeah, 7.5 is the line, which for Notre Dame on the road is a big number. But I don't think it. I mean, if I was to bet or had to bet on that game, I might be compelled to take the home underdogs in that game. But definitely something we can talk about later and worth watching today for sure.
And your reaction to Ohio State's first ball game?
Well, we talked a lot about it last week with Jeff, and I went into it with 3 questions. One, after all I've read and heard from Jeff, I went into it with 3 questions. One, first and foremost, the quarterback. Number 2, the offensive line, and number 3, the defense overall. Those 3 questions were, what I was most interested in looking at and seeing, how that unfolded on Saturday. And I thought the defense was fantastic. I think the 3 points was a gift on a turnover that Indiana shouldn't have scored. They didn't come close to scoring after that. I'd like to see that defense maybe force another turnover or 2 than they did. But overall, they were great. Shut Indiana down, and Indiana's not terrible. So the defense was A+ for me. Offensive line was very shaky. I saw Pro Football Focus's grades for all the offensive linemen, each one of them one at a time, and they were not very good. And they did not play very well. Just by watching the game, you can tell that Ohio State at times really struggled to run the ball. And I think that's mostly because of the struggles the offensive line was going through. And then the quarterback was the third question, and I think he was just okay. If you add the Marvin Harrison touchdown in that they said just yesterday should have been allowed, the Big Ten owned that officiating crew, and they said that touchdown should have been allowed.
Okay.
That would have been another 25 yards and a touchdown on his resume for that game, and I think that would have made things look a lot better. So I'm okay with him. He probably had as good, if not a better, first outing than C.J. Stroud did back in his time. So I think the quarterback's going to be fine, but we got to get the offensive line straightened out, man. They were shaky. We struggled running the ball. Ohio State did, and weren't great throwing it. Just an average day throwing the ball. So they get demoted. I think that number 3 ranking was a little shaky, and a lot of people were basing that on not really knowing for sure what I talked about in terms of what I talked about. And so they got demoted to number 5, I think they are now. And so today's game is going to be a total, washout. You're not going to be able to tell much of anything after watching today. But overall, I think it was a good outing and not terribly disappointed.
No, I agree with all your assessments, and I was a little bit concerned, just as an observer, that they really didn't get their wide receivers involved too much. And but that's something I think that they can work on today, certainly against Youngstown State. But I think they got a couple of weeks here to get things rolling before they head into South Bend. But I think they're going to have to get their receivers more involved if they want to beat Notre Dame.
Well, and there's some conversation this week about how they were afraid to show anything, and get too fancy or complicated, or they didn't want to tip their hand in terms of going into the Notre Dame game. But if they were to play that game today, I would pick Notre Dame right now. And so they need these tune-ups these next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what's going to see how they look and all that. But I think they'll be fine. They just have to play well enough to win in these big games that you got coming up, obviously.
And going into pro football a little bit here before we get Jeff on, but the Bengals-Browns open up. Of course, you're a Browns fan. I'm a Bengals fan. But before we get into that game real quick, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the contracts that were signed. I don't know if you had a chance to look at Nick Bosa and Joe Burrow's contract, but absolutely amazing. Joe Burrow, 5 years, $275 million, $219 million guaranteed. Nick Bosa, 5-year, $170 million extension and $122.5 million guaranteed. Absolutely amazing.
Well, what's not talked about with the Joe Burrow contract, that doesn't kick in for 2 years.
Yeah.
He's still under contract for 2 more years, and then that kicks in.
Yeah.
So if you take all the money he's getting paid now over the next 2 years, and then add those 5 years on top of it, it's like $9 million a game or some ridiculous amount of money. So, not saying he doesn't deserve it, but it won't be long before somebody passes that up. I mean, come on, Mahomes, he's making more money than Patrick Mahomes. That's not going to last, right? Yeah. So
probably not.
No. And Bosa's contract is insane. It feels I just to give a defensive lineman that much money, let alone that much guaranteed money, is to me just I don't know. This has got to hit a ceiling sooner or later. Everybody thought that when the Browns signed Massage Watson, that contract was crazy, and everybody was yelling and screaming and cussing, and that thing looks like a deal now compared to what all these other guys are signing. So,
and it's funny, but it's crazy that the contracts that are being signed by the quarterbacks, because right now quarterback is obviously the biggest position in pro football, but the other one is the defensive end. So you got the big contracts for the quarterback and the big contracts for the individual that's going to try to stop
the really good pass rushing.
Yeah.
And then probably third behind that is the left tackle, assuming that you got a right-handed quarterback. So it's all there, all right there. So I got to wonder, last comment on that, I got to wonder what the Bengals are going to do when they turn around and try to look at how they're going to sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I don't think they can afford to keep both of those guys. In fact, there's already been rumors and things said over social media this week that T. Higgins isn't in their plans and they're going to be trading him or something,
wow.
Sooner or later.
I hope that's false. But yeah, how do you do it?
Yeah, if you signed, obviously Burrow under contract with that big money, and you did something similar with Jamar Chase in terms of making him the highest paid wide receiver, and T. Higgins a top 10 wide receiver in terms of money, which is what he's going to want. You've tied up a gazillion dollars. I don't know the exact amount. My West Carrollton math can't work that quickly, but you've tied up a ton of money into 3 guys. And I mean, how are you going to pay the rest of the team? So big decisions, a lot
Yeah.
of whiteboarding down there in Cincinnati in terms of talking about contracts, especially for those 2 wide receivers in the next year or two.
And basically, what you're saying is the Bengals really need to win this year. They need to do it this season.
Their window,
With this core group.
yeah, I think you're right. They asked Joe Burrow what his window is, and he said, as long as I'm playing. But and there's probably some truth to that. But in terms of the guys that they have on offense right now, this might be their best chance offensively to go that far. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's a lot of money, man. That's all I know. Joe Burrow, Ohio boy, on that 2015 Ohio State roster. Back then, that also included Nick Bosa, by the way.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa and Joey Burrow, the same roster at Ohio State the same year.
Crazy.
And a bunch of other ones, Denzel Ward, Marvin Lattimore, I think is his name. They had 8 or 9. I mean, literally, like, they had in that roster, 2015, they had 6 or 7 dudes who are now either the highest paid player at their position in the NFL or top 2 or 3.
I'm not
and
sure.
didn't win the national championship.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's true. I mean, you can have a lot of talent, but not be a team. But Ohio State has just been absolutely loaded with talent the last 10, 15 years. But, Mike, real quick, you and I cover a local high school team here in town, Alter High School. They played Trotwood this week. It was a big game. Both teams went in at 2-1. The weather started off extremely miserable, and it's funny, Mike, at least in my opinion, our 2 most miserable experiences broadcasting have both been against Trotwood.
Yeah.
But it started off just absolutely miserable. Rain. We were outside. We weren't prepared for that. But it was a crazy game. Trotwood ended up winning it. The Knights made too many mistakes in that game, but it was a good ball game. 2 good teams.
Yeah, Alter's a couple fumbles. If you go look back at the Fairmont game and then against Trotwood again, they're a couple fumbles away from being undefeated.
I agree.
And you can't turn it over, in games, really big games, and expect to come out ahead. And although Trotwood did turn it over once or twice, maybe I think Alder scored some points off that.
Yeah, they almost let him back into it.
If you're not just, the old Coleraine and you're going to beat everybody by 50 points running the ball, you can't afford to make turnovers against decent teams and expect to win. And Alder's still a young team. We talked about it last year. All those freshmen are sophomores now. But if you look at a football roster at high school level, a lot of sophomores equals a young team, right?
Yeah.
And although they have experience, they're still young, and maybe that's part of it. But 2 losses, a couple big turnovers, and you're 2-2 instead of 4-0. So but Trotwood's good.
They are.
Their speed just took over in the second half. They were able to get guys deep, wide open, and Carpenter.
Yeah, you nailed
a great
that
quarterback, threw a great ball, and hung in the pocket, and big strong guy. And so Jeff was there, but it was a good game. Just couldn't get it done at the end. Alter, once they got down, leading 17-7 at half. Probably came immediately back and took a lead. But then Alder made a game of it at the end, but just couldn't get over the hump. And, didn't recover that onside kick there at the end. And give Trotwood credit. They're now, I think, going to run the table probably, although they do play. I think they play Withrow, who took St. X down to the wire last night and was undefeated previous. But they have the City League. The rest of their schedule is all the City League. So they have a legit chance to go 9-0 over their last 9 games, and that would put them atop the D3 statewide, I would think, in the playoff standings.
Yeah, very talented team. They're legit, as you mentioned. Definitely a contender for that state title. But, Jeff Gilbert was there the other night covering the game as well. So if you're there, Jeff, let's go ahead and bring on Mr. Gilbert, who covered that ball game. And, Jeff, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Jeff, really appreciate it. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. I am where I'm going to be for the rest of the day, and looks like it's going to be a pretty nice day here in Columbus.
Are you in the press box? I'm assuming you're in a press box somewhere.
Yeah, I am in my seat above the 10-yard line at the north end.
We
way above the 10-yard line.
Yeah. We played in a state championship game there several years ago when I was doing the radio with Joe Smith, and we went into the press entrance in the back there, and we got on an elevator and they pushed number 8. So we're going eight floors up, and I'm like, what the heck?
Amazing.
And then we get off and we sit down, and I can't even see the numbers on the jerseys on the field. I gotta look at the big screen or the monitor in the press box. Man, it's an insane view.
Yeah, I have binoculars.
So it's a little higher up than you were at Xenia Thursday night.
A little bit. A little more comfortable, though.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh.
Jeff, we did touch a little bit on that Alter Trotwood game. What was your reaction following that ball game Thursday night?
Speed wins out.
Yep.
You know, and they took advantage of the moments that they could. You know, when Carpenter hit Armani Rogers down the right sideline, it's like, you know, he saw one-on-one and he took advantage of it. It's like you can't cover that kid one-on-one.
Right.
Not too many high school defensive backs in the country really to cover a kid that fast. So, you know, I'll give Aaron Scott a shot at Springfield to cover him for sure. He's coming over here to Ohio State to play next year. But, you know, outside of that, not many guys that could do that.
Well, and it was a perfect pass.
You know, it was a perfect throw. You know, and, you know, Mike Smith had broken one, I think before that, he broke a long touchdown. And as soon as he got to that second level, I mean, you could see he was in a hole and he was going to be gone. Before he got through the hole, I knew he was gone. You know, he just, that speed. And, you know, they were resilient enough to bounce back from the first half. And then Alter was resilient enough to hang around and stay in there. So, I mean, Alter, you know, they got a good team. You know, they played a tough schedule here, as they always do. They'll have something. You know, they won't be an easy out in the playoffs, and Trotwood certainly won't be either.
No. Jeff, Mike and I talked a little bit about the contracts that are getting signed in the NFL. Just this past week, Joe Burrow signed a monster contract, 5 years, $275 million, $219 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is all headed?
Good. Lots of investment, lots of property,
Lots of taxes.
Lots of taxes too. But you know, I'm sure he can afford a good accountant to help him navigate all that.
Right.
But I know what you mean in terms of the You mean in terms of the Bengals?
Well, yeah, the Bengals and the overall NFL. I think other teams are going to see that contract and go, "Oh my."
Yeah, they are, because they're going to have their guy that's going, you know, who's going to want his money. You know, record contracts only last for so long.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Yeah, so that'll happen. But I think the thing for the Bengals is everybody's worried about, can they afford to keep all these other good players?
Right.
You know, well, Jamar Chase they're going to take care of. You know, do they take care of T. Higgins? I don't know, but they took care of Logan Wilson in the offseason. You saw what they did with the secondary, with the safeties. They drafted ahead of the need, you know, like Dax Hill last year and so forth. They drafted ahead. They drafted and brought in guys ahead of the need when they knew they'd probably lose those guys, so that they had guys who had been in their system and ready to go. And I think that's something you have to do in the NFL. I think the Bengals roster is nearly perfect this year. It's a great opportunity for them to win the Super Bowl for sure. And I think so. You worry about T. Higgins. Can they keep him? Well, maybe not. That doesn't mean they can't find another guy who's really good.
Right.
They've been good at that. That's what sports has become. It's that way in baseball. If you're the Reds, if you're smaller markets, you have to have a pipeline of guys coming, which is, I think, is what the Reds are trying to accomplish, so that when you lock up a couple guys, and then other guys are going to go that are good players. But if you've got a pipeline, if you've drafted well and you've prepared for the replacements, instead of wait till the day you lose them and go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Then you have a chance to sustain success. If you if you put all your eggs in like the Rams 2 years ago, they sort of like all the eggs in one basket, right? And they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Good for them, but they're not good now.
They didn't even make the
know,
playoffs last year.
No, they didn't. So that's I'm not going to wring I'm a Bengals fan, but I'm not going to wring my hands over. Oh my gosh, what if they lose T. Higgins? Because they found T. Higgins at a draft spot where I don't remember where they picked him exactly, but it wasn't like he was a top 10 pick. He wasn't Jamar Chase in the draft, right?
Yeah.
They can spot a guy, they can find a guy, and they can get him in there, and he can be really good because part of the reason T. Higgins is good is because Jamar Chase is on the other side. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried about it, and a lot of fans are going to be. You get attached. Fans get attached to players, and they don't want them to go. But you know what? You want to win more than anything. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, it's
if over the next 3 or 4 years, that's the only thing that really gets in the way is signing T. Higgins or not. I mean, they're in pretty good shape, but it becomes a really. I mean, I think these general managers. I don't know if they hire people or they drive this, but this whole cap space thing and having a budget and signing guys to contracts and restructuring them and all this crap, that's like rocket science almost to me. They must spend hours and hours in rooms with whiteboards, combing over that and trying to do exactly what you're saying, and that is forecast the future relative to who they're going to have, how much they're going to be making, how much they're going to have to pay, what the cap space is, what their cap space is.
I'm sure
all of
it's
that
a
sounds like,
spreadsheet.
it sounds like something way above and beyond my level of thinking. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's people in the Bengals front office right now who are already trying to figure out next year's roster.
Right.
They absolutely have to be, and maybe beyond next year.
I think they have to have about a 3-year look at it, a 3-year view of it.
Yeah, you do. You have to look down the road. You can't just play the year and say, okay, what do we do for next year?
Yeah,
I mean, there is reevaluation after the season, but it doesn't start. It's already started.
They wouldn't have given Burrow that much money if they didn't know probably within about 80% accuracy of what they were going to look like in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
His contract doesn't kick in for 2 more years. He's still under contract for 2 years, and then the new one kicks in. So that's 7 years out. I'm sure they didn't go, well, we'll just figure it out then, like you said. They have to have a view
it touches
of
everything.
Yep.
And unlike the government, they can't print money, so they're going to have to figure out a way. Ultimately, the fan is going to pay the price for it.
Well, I mean, it's typical spreadsheet. You got an income and you got outcome, right? And so they know what they're going to be bringing in and how much money they're going to be making. I think the difference now with the Bengals than maybe 10 years ago is that with new management, probably Katie Brown, they're willing to spend more and maybe make a little less to win, right? Whereas before, the notion was, I think, that they wanted to win, but maybe not at all costs, and they were really in it to make money, right? They were really in to be profitable, and I don't know what that margin was, but I think I think they're now to the point where, we're willing to spend a little bit more money to win than we were before in the past, even though that means our margins will be weaker. But we're going to win, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, right? I mean, that's going to be part of the economics as well.
Well, certainly they've got other revenue streams in their corporate entities of whatever they are. I don't know the details of that, but certainly they do. And at some point, and maybe the way they played it for years is allowing them to do this now.
Yeah, right.
And make it easier to swallow. Like, okay. What am I going to do with all this money anyway? I might as well try to win some football games with it.
Yeah.
See if I can get a Super Bowl. So
life is so much easier when you're winning.
Absolutely.
It is.
For everybody.
Everybody's happy. Everybody, unless you're some of the fringe of Ohio State fans last week who can't be happy with anything. So
Well, that's a perfect segue, Jeff, into what I was going to ask you. If we wanted to get your reaction of the Indiana game last week, and maybe what you think the fans should look for today. Should they look for maybe the other quarterback getting a little bit more time today? But what was your feeling from last week's game against Indiana?
Well, I think what you look at first game is execution, and did you execute the way you wanted to? And And defensively, yes, they did. Overall, they were pretty happy with that. Um, and but offensively, really it was the line play that wasn't so great. I mean, they do their grades of the players every week, and they'll be grayed out as a champion, and only the right tackle, Josh Fryer, graded out as a champion. The rest did not, and that's including the two guards who were returning starters. So, they play Youngstown State today, whose FCS has 63 scholarships versus 85. I did see Youngstown State play last year. I was up there when they played Dayton. I went up for that game, cover that game. I mean, they're obviously more athletic and more scholarship guys than Dayton, so they handle Dayton, right? I think they're ranked 24th or 25th, something like that, in the FCS poll. So they're not, they are a good FCS team, but they're not going to stack up, obviously, with Ohio State. So
right.
I'm not going to look so much at scores and score and everything. It's like, did they execute? Did they clean up some stuff? And it's going to be easier to execute against this team than it is against a Big Ten opponent for sure. But I think that's what they're looking for. Are we gonna do the things? Are we gonna be in the right spots more where we're supposed to be, and which represents growth? Because at the end of this, if they win 55-3, you're gonna say, well, what does that prove? They beat Youngstown State. Well, it doesn't prove a lot, but you have to look under the hood a little bit to see what it does show. So that'll be the interesting comment. Some of that'll come out today after the game, if they have that kind of performance. But after they certainly, as they like to, they always want to look at the film, which I understand. And what Kansas State Tuesday, we'll dig into that more. So I think it's, last week wasn't beautiful by any means. I thought it would be a little prettier than that. I didn't expect it to be beautiful, but they've got a couple weeks here, and then next week Western Kentucky comes in, and people are like, well, who's that? But they were one of the top passing teams in the nation last year, and at FBS level. So they're going to test them, and that'll be good for them, especially going into a Notre Dame game with a Notre Dame team that apparently should be able to throw the ball pretty well this year.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that will certainly, that's going to be the marquee game certainly in a couple weeks. But yeah, Ohio State has a couple of weeks to tune up here before they head to South Bend. And speaking of Notre Dame, Jeff, they head down to North Carolina State today, and they're expecting some bad weather there. I can't remember the year that Notre Dame went down there, but it was the same thing. They basically played in a hurricane, and I think NC State came away with a 10-3 victory. And that game really had me upset because Notre Dame threw the ball like 50 times in that game when they should have been running. So what's your feeling on that one? I think Notre Dame, my personal feeling is that Notre Dame is going to win the game, but I personally have Notre Dame on a little bit of an upset alert there today.
Well, we know you have a pretty good record on upset alert.
Yes, he does.
After last week.
Yeah.
And so I think, they should be. NC State has had a history of just sort of knocking somebody off a lot. Over the years, they've done it to Florida State more than once when nobody saw it coming. They're always a tough kind of a tough team that plays hard and finds a way to hang around with good teams. So yeah, they should be. It's not an easy walk in the park for Notre Dame by any means. What's Notre Dame proven anyway? I mean, honestly.
Exactly.
They haven't. What have they proven? I mean, we think they're good, but what do we? It's like we think Ohio State's good, but what have they proven? That's what this part of this season is for: to start proving who you are and finding your identity. And
you're absolutely right. I always kind of feel like they should wait till like week 4 or 5 to even rank teams.
They used to do. They BCS was that way.
Yeah.
I kind of like. I hear you. Now that the AP poll doesn't mean anything, I like that they do it from the beginning because it gives us all something. It gives us a baseline. It gives us a I don't know, for historical perspective of who we thought was good and they were, and who we thought was good and they weren't. You know, to say, oh well, everybody thought Clemson was going to be good, and now they might struggle. They may not make it back into the top 10.
Yeah.
So I like it for that reason, but I do think that for the playoff thing ranking, I do think it's wise that they wait several weeks into the season before they start doing that. But the polls that don't matter anymore, that don't have any effect on how they do playoffs, I'm fine with those being early, just because I like to kind of see what people are thinking.
Jeff, real quick before we let you go, let's go back to Ohio State just for a second. I talked about this with Tim when we first got started. I was personally very impressed with their defense, and I don't think people are talking enough about how good they were. It should have been a shutout. The 3 points Indiana got was off that interception and was kind of a gift. But they didn't get anywhere near after the end zone after that, and I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, they were. They executed. They were where they were supposed to be, and did the things they were supposed to do. They got surprised by the triple option, and they handled that well.
Yes.
And that goes back to what I was saying about execution. The offensive line has to prove they can execute the way they're supposed to. The defense showed last week that they can execute the way they should and deal with stuff. Now they're going to face better offenses. They're going to have tougher tests, obviously, as it goes. But it was a great start. I mean,
yes.
Compared to what we saw last year,
yes.
It was a great start. So something to build on. I'm not ready to give them the Team Butkus award or anything like that, but I think it was encouraging. I think one of the most encouraging things was the secondary. I think the way Josh Proctor played. You know, Josh Proctor has been up and down kind of guy, and I thought he had a great game.
Right.
Made some big plays. You're just beginning to see what Sonny Styles can do. He went sideline to sideline a couple times and pushed guys out of bounds. That looked kind of reminded me of Ronnie Shazier a little bit. So, you know, those are things that I think are going to be interesting to see how they develop. But I think there's a great baseline there to build on. And Jim Knowles, I think, was genuinely happy with what he saw. I don't think he was just trying to build their confidence and say they were great in his public appearance on Tuesday. But I think he meant it. I think he felt really good about it. So that said something to me because I don't think he's the type to sugarcoat. So I think he meant it.
Yeah,
he felt good about it.
Yeah, I was extremely happy. I guess you're right. You got to wait and see. The next 2 weeks aren't going to mean much, but that Notre Dame game will be a tremendous barometer. But if they could stay healthy, the depth on the defensive line, the play of the defensive backs, and those two linebackers, I mean, it was as good as I've seen them play in a long time.
It's the most depth they've had on that side since Hafley left. So it has an ability to be really strong.
Yep.
And right now, maybe in a Notre Dame game, right at this early stage where they're still trying to get a quarterback up to mid-season form, so to speak, the defense might have to carry him in that game.
Yes. Yep.
Jeff, we know you got a lot going on today being at the Ohio State game, but real quick, before we let you get back to your normal job there, just wanted to get your real quick reaction on the Texas-Alabama game and maybe the Nebraska-Colorado game. I think people are looking at that one especially different now with the start that Colorado had last week over TCU.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, I don't know what the line is on that game.
I think Colorado's actually minus
it
3.5.
Nebraska opened as a favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, as a favorite, and it's moved like 10 points since Colorado won. So, yeah, Colorado's a favorite in Lincoln.
3.5, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
No, it's at Colorado.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is at Colorado. Yeah, at Boulder.
Yeah, and I watched a decent amount of that game before the Ohio State game started last week. I'm sitting here on my laptop watching it, and I mean they're impressive. They got speed. They're dynamic. I mean, if Nebraska isn't any better than what they've been, I don't see how Nebraska wins that game.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I just don't. I mean, unless Colorado just comes out flat, because which they could be flat after last week. It's hard to. It's not an easy thing to do. How do you handle success? So that'll be interesting. Nebraska's hearing all that noise about Colorado, so they'll be fired up, ready to go. I don't have a doubt about that.
Yeah.
I think the Alabama-Texas game tonight is interesting.
Really interesting.
It's also interesting from an Ohio State fan standpoint, because Quinn Ewers is the Texas quarterback, and if he had left, he might be starting it. We might be watching him start here today.
Yes, we would be. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's an interesting thought to have as you watch that, as Ohio State fans watch that and see him perform against Alabama, and you might think, well, wow, what could have been, or Quinn Ewers has a rough day, and then lots of noise starts happening in Texas, and they got a guy with the last name of Manning down there, don't they?
They do.
Yes.
And so that's the noise will get loud.
Yeah, it's a great early season game, man.
I don't know if they have to win, but he has to play well. It can't be our quarterback cost us the game. If that happens, there's a lot of noise. If he plays well and it's not his fault, the defense wasn't good, or they lose a close back and forth game, he'll be fine. But so that'll be an interesting thing. And I think, is that game in Alabama, right?
It is at Alabama, yes.
That Tuscaloosa. So I mean, you have to favor Alabama. I mean, sort of Texas is in this. They got to win something like this before you believe in them a whole lot. And
absolutely,
it's not like Sark has been great as a head coach in the past. So there's a lot on the table there for them to prove.
All right, Jeff, where can everybody find you? You do an excellent job. Just make sure you get your plug in here, because I think people would be wise to go out and find you. Your stories are fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So my high school stuff, for the most part, is Dayton Daily News. So I've got a story out this morning on the Centerville-Miamisburg game. Centerville won last night. I'll be writing a follow-up to that here this morning that'll run in the Sunday paper on that, and about their quarterbacks and the Wildcat stuff they're doing with a really good player. And then PressProsMagazine.com is my Ohio State coverage. So I'll have something this evening on the game, and then a couple things during the week, just looking at the team. And then I'm on Twitter at JW_Gilbert if you want to follow me there and follow the links to the stuff I do and other stuff that other people at those sites write. So I encourage anybody who follows high school football around here, check out the Dave Jablonski story today on the Wayne Springfield game last night. It was a wild one.
I heard.
Fantastic.
And you're my first go-to on the Ohio State stuff. I check you out.
I appreciate it.
If not late Saturday night, first thing on Sunday. Hate to say this out loud for you to hear, but I dropped my subscription to the Dayton Daily newspaper several months ago, and I've been meaning to kind of renew it and get back online with it, and haven't done it. But I do have ways I can get to some of those articles.
You're not supposed to say.
I don't know anything about that.
I know. So, but anyways, I love your stories, and press pros stuff is my go-to, at least for the first wave of stuff I want to read about when it comes to Ohio State football.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us again. Always appreciate your commentary, and enjoy the game today. Enjoy a great weekend of college and pro football.
Okay, I sure will.
All right, Jeff. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And folks, that was Jeff Gilbert. He writes for Press Pros Magazine, an online service that covers Ohio State football, and also writes for the Dayton Daily News locally here in town. And always great to have Jeff on. I talked to Jeff this week, Mike, and said, you certainly don't have to come on again. We love when you come on. He's like, oh, I love it. So
Yeah.
I said, well, come on, let's
Yeah,
get
as
on.
as knowledgeable as it gets in terms of the subject matter we expect him to talk about, and I don't think there's anybody better that we could get, one person that we could get that can talk better, more or better about high school football and Ohio State and other sports in general. But saw Jeff Thursday night out at Xenia, and that Titanic struggle that we broadcast. Still hearing those Spanish horns in my ears. But he did a great job. That was a good article he wrote, and he went down on the field and talked to Jeff Graham afterwards and got some nice comments from him. But he's seen Trotwood a couple times now, and Alder for that matter. So he's an expert on both of those teams, that's for sure.
And it's hard to explain, Mike, right now for the listeners, just how comical it was the other night. But I got a lot of reaction from people who just, besides the game, just absolutely were cracking up of the things that were going on and happening to you and I. We could barely get words in without the music blaring, but it was just an absolute comical experience.
It was funny, and I got some comments and texts the next day about my singing and about the Mexican dances and the trumpets and the bullfighting music that was being blared away time and time again like a bad dream. It was hopefully we don't have to go through anything like that ever again.
Very hopeful we do not. So Mike, that's going to bring us to the point of the show where we're going to do our picks again. Last week we both went 1-1. You picked LSU over FSU.
Loser.
I picked FSU, won that one, and I even called the upset of the Clemson-Duke game, but I went with Clemson because I thought that they would eventually find a way to win, but not even close. Duke won outright and by a lot.
It was They dominated them. Duke absolutely dominated them. A shocking win. Probably.
It was a sloppy game.
It was probably the most shocking score of the weekend. I mean, LSU losing to Florida State, not so much, I guess, but the way Duke beat, not just the fact that they won, but the way they beat Clemson and how they dominated them is that was the story of the weekend.
Crazy. So we're gonna have 3 picks for college and pro.
We both picked Ohio State, so those were brilliant. Yeah. Those were brilliant moves there by us.
Yeah, that was that was big time right there. This week's college games, we touched a little bit on it. Texas, Alabama. Alabama's favored by 7. Notre Dame at North Carolina State, and ND is 7.5 point favorite. And Nebraska at Colorado, a big move in the line there, Mike, as you mentioned. Colorado now favored, at least from the latest line that I saw, by 3.5.
Yeah, you're right. You got it.
And I don't know. Last week we really didn't go by the point spread. Do you want to go by the point spread?
Well, if we're going to go by the point spread, I can tell you right now I'm taking all the underdogs. I'm taking every team that's getting points in that list you just gave us.
So you will take Texas.
Yes.
NC State.
Correct.
Or plus 7.5,
yes.
And Nebraska.
Plus 3 or 3.5.
Okay. Yes. I'm going to take Alabama minus 7. I'm going to take Notre Dame minus 7.5. And I'm going to go with Colorado. So we're actually the exact opposite on
diametrically opposed on all 3 of those picks. I like that.
Yeah, I'm not Texas is going to have to prove it to me, especially in Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama's going to win that one easy.
Yeah, I don't know about easy. I think it's going to be competitive. Remember, Texas should have won
Although
last
Alabama
year.
has no quarterback.
And they haven't proven anything yet this year. Neither team has. But Texas should have beat them last year, and they were beating them until Ewers got hurt. Yeah. Admittedly in Texas or at Texas, but
good point.
Can't profess to say that I know everybody, the rosters and who's coming back or who's not. But all things being equal, and this is an opportunity for Texas like no other, really. And I hate Alabama, so.
Well, in the NC State game, the weather's going to be a factor. If Brian Kelly was still coaching Notre Dame, I would take NC State because he just never. Well, they won games that they were supposed to win under Kelly, but his teams never covered.
Yeah, they didn't do a great job in big games for sure. That's right. Neither has LSU since he's been down there.
Colorado, Nebraska.
But that game, though, Tim, and we'd have to look it up to quantify it, but Jeff mentioned it. North Carolina State has played well at home against higher-ranked teams.
Absolutely.
And for whatever reason, that environment, that stadium, they get behind that team, and they really play well against higher-ranked teams, even in non-conference. And everybody gets up for Notre Dame, obviously. So, did you say that was 7.5?
Yeah, Notre Dame is favored by 7.5.
Yeah, that's
bad
a
weather.
lot of points. That hook might make the difference. But
yeah, that's going to be a really interesting match, and it has me nervous, certainly. Nebraska, Colorado. I was impressed by Colorado. I don't think I was over the top like everybody else was. I don't think TCU's defense is very good.
well, neither is Colorado's.
No, I mean that was just an absolute scoring bonanza last week. So I've tapped the brakes a little bit on Colorado. I think they're way better than people thought they would be, but I'm not just going crazy about them and think we should put them in the top 5.
Number one, well, no. They're barely top 25 right now, but number one, they're going to have a huge letdown. I mean, the build up to that game and what happened and afterwards is just a tremendous emotional roller coaster. And they're going to have a huge letdown, I think, going into today's game and getting up for that. It is a rivalry game, Nebraska and Colorado, but Nebraska lost. They are to a pretty solid Minnesota team last week. I think Nebraska's solid. I think they're Big Ten. They got a Big Ten roster. They do have a lot of transfers. I'll say I will agree with that. But I just think Colorado's bubble is going to burst today. They're going to be down a little bit. They're not going to be able to move the ball against Nebraska like they did against TCU. And I'm going obviously with Nebraska. I think Nebraska's going to win the game, let alone cover the point spread. But
all right, that one will be interesting.
Yeah, they got to represent the Big Ten today.
All right, for the college game, Mike, that brings you and I to our helmet sticker winners from last week. I'm going to stay with that game. Shadur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, quarterback for Colorado. He had 510 passing yards. He was 38 of 47 and had 4 TD passes, and just a very, very impressive performance by him last week.
Very impressive for Shadur.
Yes, very good. He gets my helmet sticker.
Right, and it was fantastic, and he proved that guys playing historically black colleges can move up and be just as good at this level. But he'll be tested today. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. For me, it's the Florida State quarterback, Jordan Travis. Obviously led them over LSU, threw for 342 yards and 4 touchdowns, had an interception, but played tremendous against LSU. And all of a sudden, FSU is in everybody's conversations as the top 10 for sure, maybe a top 5 team, and maybe even a national championship, Final Four contender after that game. They dominated LSU.
He was fantastic in the second half.
Yes.
And then that will bring us to the pro game, Mike. We have 3 games also that we're going to pick today. I being the Cincinnati fan, you being Cleveland. Cincinnati at Cleveland. Cincinnati's -2 at the moment. I'm going to go with Cincinnati. And then Dallas at the New York Giants. I think this is a really intriguing game. That's the night game tomorrow night. And I'm going to go with the Giants +3.5. And then another interesting game the following night, Monday Night Football. Buffalo is 8.5-point favorite. They're going to be at the Jets. I think I'm going to go with the Jets.
8.5? Is that right?
That's the line that I saw. It may have moved a little bit, but that's the one that I got. But I'm going to go with the Jets. You and I can adjust that line if we need to, but I'm going to go with the Jets in that one.
Yeah, I'm going to go in reverse order than what you went. I'm going to go with the Jets are getting 8.5. I'm taking the Jets in that game. I mean, there's been a lot of hype for them, and I think they are decent. They got a great roster. I think their defense is outstanding.
Well, especially with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, especially with Aaron Rodgers, but their defense is probably going to be the strength of that team when it's all said and done. And so I'm going to take the Jets. In the Giants-Dallas game, I'm going to take Dallas. I think they've got so much to prove, and the jury's out for me on the Giants and everything that's going on up there with Danny Dimes, the quarterback. And then, of course, I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns. If you can see this on the YouTube broadcast, Jamar Chase came out this week and made some comments about the Elves and how he was going to call the Browns the Elves now, and all these, bulletin board material remarks to help motivate the Browns. But I think that line's only like 2.5, I think you said, or something like that.
Yeah, right now, at least this line that I saw, Cincinnati's
that's fluctuated
-2.
back and forth between 3 and 1.5 for the past several months. The Browns are obviously at home, and that's an automatic 3 points for being at home. But I think the Browns have quietly built one of the top 5 or 6 rosters in the league. Their defense is going to be much better. We got Massage Watson with a lot more experience, and he should be ready to go. Good receivers. They're at home, and
I think Cleveland's had an impressive roster for the last 5 years.
8-2 over the Bengals the last 10 games, and I think 4-1 against Joey Burrow. So
that one that statistic you just brought up gave me pause, but
yes.
I'm going to go with the Bengals.
Yep, we should. But,
hopefully Burrow will play well. He did not play well in the opener last year against Pittsburgh.
Correct, and he's coming off an injury again this year. Last year it was the operation or surgery he had. This year it's the calf. Is it going to stay healthy? What about the first time he has to run for Miles Garrett? And he's got to put that foot in the ground, right, and explode off that that calf. We'll see, but I'm
gonna be fun.
I can't wait. Hope the weather's good, and
yeah,
I'm gonna be sitting in front of my 75-incher watching that tomorrow for sure.
Absolutely, folks. Thanks for joining us for Gamecast Radio Sports Talk. Really enjoyed it. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy all the games, and have a great weekend. And we'll see you next time on Gamecast Radio Sports Talk.
Have a great weekend.